PX0 is where the whole Pacifista project begins, and that's just Kuma himself. You see, Bonney had a deadly disease called Sapphire Scales, and Kuma wanted nothing more than to cure her of that disease. He traveled across the 4 blue seas and did everything he could. But it wasn't until Monkey D. Dragon referred him to Dr. Vegapunk that Kuma finally saw hope. Yes, Vegapunk could cure her of the disease, but as you'd expect, it would require a fair amount of resources. However, all Vegapunk asked for in return is a few blood samples. This is because Kuma is the only known survivor of the near-extinct special race known as the Buccaneers. His body is theoretically perfect for the Pacifista, or should I say, the human weapons program that Vegapunk had been developing for the world government. This sequence happens in chapter 1099, the chapter title Pacifist. Also in the chapter, Vegapunk calls Kuma a true saint. But when Kuma replies that he's just a weak-willed pacifist, Vegapunk decides to use that term as the name for his future soldiers. That's how we got the name Pacifista. Unfortunately, little did Vegapunk know that Saturn, who is the warrior god of science and defense, and one of the 5 elders of the world government, was actually listening in on their conversation. He was okay with Bonney's treatment, but wanted Kuma to accept 3 conditions. The first one is to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea. The second is to also turn himself into a cyborg. Finally, the third one is to have both his personality and his free will completely erased from existence. And if this wasn't enough, Saturn placed another condition about how Kuma would not be able to meet Bonney under any circumstances after her recovery, and that Bonney would be under constant government surveillance. Of course, Kuma still accepted that fate because all he wanted was for Bonney to live. Now, Kuma's transformation into PX0 was gradual. It happened over the course of 4 years, and it wasn't until Kuma helped Luffy and the Straw Hats escape Sabaody archipelago that he finally became a complete pacifista. At that time, Kuma was satisfied with his life. He talked about how he sees Nika and Luffy, he thanked Vegapunk, and also asked Vegapunk to wish Bonney a happy 10th birthday in his stead. Then, with tears in his eyes, Vegapunk finally pulls down the lever of Kuma's machine, and just like that, Kuma becomes a complete human weapon. This happened around the time when Luffy was on his way to Amazon Lily, and this is why Kuma felt so mindless in the Marineford compared to how he was in the Sabaody archipelago. Yes, he still protected Thousand Sunny for the 2 years that Luffy and the Straw Hats were away, but that was simply because he had asked Vegapunk to program that mission into him before he lost his mind. However, once Frankie came back and saw the ship was safe, the mission was completed and Kuma quietly left. He became a celestial dragon slave for the 2nd time in his life, and even after the Revolutionary Army freed him, he wasn't aware of what was going on. However, something within him was clearly still alive, because when Saturn is about to hurt Bonney on Egghead, Kuma travels all the way from Kamabaka Kingdom in the first half of Grand Line to Egghead, which is isolated far in the New World, just to deliver what may very well be the single greatest punch in the history of One Piece straight to Saturn's face. This was PX0. No, this was Bartholomew Kuma, the kindest dad in the world. PX1 is the first fully synthetic pacifista unit ever made. It first appeared together with Sentomaru in chapter 511. This was back when the Straw Hats and the Supernova were getting jumped by the Marines because of what Luffy did to that one celestial dragon. Of course, at the time, nobody had any idea about the Pacifista project, and because it looked exactly like Kuma, and considering how there were already other Pacifista at the scene, PX1 caused a lot of confusion. Now, we don't know what PX1 is up to right now because when the Straw Hats were getting absolutely destroyed, Kuma himself used his powers to send PX1 to an unknown location. That was the last time PX1 was shown on screen. PX4 is the first pacifista that the Straw Hats ever defeated. It appeared in chapter 508 and basically took all the Straw Hats working together to finally render it unable to move. It was a pure menace. Seriously, if you go back and reread Sabaody, you'll see just how much each of the Straw Hats had to struggle to finally win against just one pacifista. Now, we don't know if the Marines ever took it back to Egghead to get it fixed. The last we saw of PX4, it was completely shut down and out of commission. PX5 is the Pacifista that Luffy one-shots during the reunion at Sabaody. It appeared with Sentomaru to take care of the Straw Hats before they could set sail again, but Luffy straight up calls its light laser slow and proceeds to one-shot it with a smooth Gear 2 enhanced Gum Gum jet pistol. PX7 was right alongside PX5 during the reunion at Sabaody, but Zoro and Sanji immediately destroyed it together with their basic attacks. Basically, PX4 was to show that Straw Hats weren't ready for the new world, not even close, while PX5 and PX7 were to show that yes, the boys are now ready. Next, we have all the Pacifista units that showed up on screen, but their unit numbers were never confirmed in the manga. Starting with the ones that showed up at Sabaody during the Worst Generations clash with the Marines. We have the unit that fought the Kid Pirates and the Heart Pirates. And we also have the unit that went up against Arouge, X-Drake, Hawkins, and Apu. Then during the Marineford War, we had 20 more Pacifistas deployed by the Marines. Boa Hancock, as well as the Whitebeard Pirates and their allies, destroyed several of them, but a few survived the battle and later attacked Gecko Moria together with Doflamingo. Then we have the Pacifista Police Guard. Luffy, Bonney, Chopper, and Jinbei ran into him when they didn't pay for their food on Egghead. And I'd say that this is basically the same as the other Pacifista units, except for the fact that it wears a police uniform and is only supposed to do police work. Esper is the Seraphim version of Bartholomew Kuma. The Seraphim are a special type of Pacifista unit created by Vegapunk to replace the Warlords. Each one is a clone of the 7 OG Warlords, but with extraordinary upgrades. For example, they all have Lunarian traits, like dark skin, white hair, and a flame on their back, which makes it pretty much impossible to hurt them as long as the flame is on. They also have Pacifista lasers, plus they are augmented with green blood, which allows them to also use the Devil Fruit abilities of the Warlords they're based on. Considering all of this, it makes sense why Vegapunk himself described the Seraphim as the pinnacle of his scientific achievements. He straight up called them the strongest form of humanity. Now, speaking of Esper, while he has Lunarian traits like flames on his back to enhance his durability, he has also inherited the disposition of the Buccaneer race thanks to Kuma's lineage factor. So not only is he an artificial Lunarian, he is also an artificial Buccaneer. And Buccaneers, as we already know, are a race of people that carry the blood of giants within them. No wonder Esper was able to easily withstand a combined attack from a Gear 4 enhanced Monkey D. Luffy and awaken Rob Lucci. Of course, Esper also has the ability to fire lasers from his mouth or palms like the normal Pacifista units, but the biggest deal is still the artificial version of Kuma's Pawpaw Fruit. Guys, Kuma's fruit is overpowered in the sense that it can repel anything he touches, even intangible things like pain or energy. And we also have the fact that Esper and the other Seraphim can also use observation and armament hockey. Esper first showed up alongside CP0 on their way to Egghead, and so far his primary battle has been against the alliance of Luffy, Zoro, Lucci, and Kaku. By the way, keep in mind that Esper and the other Seraphim are still children. They're gonna grow and mature, and as they grow, they'll continue to get much stronger than they are now. The more you think about them, the more it makes sense why Vegapunk called them the strongest form of humanity. S-Snake is the Seraphim version of Boa Hancock. She is also a younger version of her, but with those Lunarian features and Pacifista lasers. And just like the real Hancock, S-Snake has the powers of the Love fruit that allows her to turn people into stone as long as they are charmed by her. Though of course, unlike Boa who uses lust, S-Snake uses her cuteness. Well, she is still a kid after all. She first appeared on Amazon Lily during the attack by the Marines and Blackbeard, and we saw her fight against the Kuga Pirates, including Marguerite. And if we're talking about the Egghead incident, she easily petrified Frankie, Usopp, and Lilith thanks to her cuteness. Now, after she ran into Luffy, he thought that she was the actual Hancock. He asked her to undo the petrification of Frankie, Usopp, and Lilith, and although it should have been theoretically impossible for Luffy to override York's orders, Luffy's persona somehow triggers the same love and affection in her that Boa Hancock has for him. She listens to Luffy and undoes the petrification. What do you think? Was it just because S-Snake inherited Boa Hancock's lineage factor? Now S-Snake can also use both observation and armament haki, but we don't know if she has Conqueror's haki. I guess we'll find out when she becomes an adult. Though I do think she does have Conqueror's haki because even though the Seraphim are synthetic beings, if S-Snake was able to inherit Boa's love for Luffy, she must have also inherited her disposition to be a king. S-Hawk is the Seraphim version of Dracul Mihawk, the strongest swordsman in the world. He is a younger version of him, but unlike Mihawk, he has Lunarian traits, Pacifista lasers, and Devil Fruit powers. We're talking about the Devil of Sir Crocodile's right-hand man, Dazbones. It's the Dice fruit, and it allows him to transform any part of his body into a sharp blade. He first showed up on Amazon Lily during the clash between the Marines, the Kuja, and Blackbeard's crew. He briefly clashed with Blackbeard himself, and Blackbeard was low-key terrified of him from what we saw in chapter 1059. If we're talking about Egghead, then S-Hawk's primary opponent was Roronoa's Zoro. Zoro handled him better than Blackbeard. I mean, to put this into perspective, when S-Hawk struggled against Zoro, he even said that S-Hawk is a little more human than Mihawk. Honestly, when you think about it, S-Hawk is basically a combination of multiple of Zoro's personal opponents. He has Mihawk's appearance and skills, he has Dazbones' Dice fruit, and he has King Lunarian's physiology. S-Shark is the Seraphim version of Jinbei. He is a younger version of him, but of course, unlike Jinbei, he has Lunarian traits, Pacifista lasers, and also a Devil Fruit. His Devil Fruit is an artificial version of Senior Pink's Swim fruit that allows him to swim in solid surfaces such as the ground and through walls. This gives him the ability to move underground and through structures to attack at unsuspecting angles and avoid attacks. And considering how he can use Fishman Karate thanks to Jinbei's lineage factor, he can also manipulate the liquefied ground and then use it to launch Fishman Karate attacks. This means that unlike Jinbei, he doesn't need actual water to lock in. In the manga, his major opponent during Egghead was Sanji, and as strong as S-Shark is, Sanji was able to easily take a punch from him to his face with no visible damage. However, in the anime, Toei animation made Sanji look bad, but I guess Toei's treatment of Sanji is a story for another time. For now, let's move on to the three Seraphim that already made their appearance in chapter 1086, but haven't actually been relevant so far in the story. And unlike S-Bear, S-Snake, S-Hawk, or S-Shark, we don't know their names either. The first one of these three is the Seraphim version of Doflamingo. He's got the same confident smirk and signature sunglasses, just in a smaller frame. And while we haven't seen anything from him, it's obvious that he has Lunarian traits, Pacifista lasers, and an artificial version of the string fruit. Though just like S-Snake, we have no idea if he's ever gonna have Conqueror's haki or not. Right now, Boa and Doflamingo are the only two confirmed Conqueror's haki users among the OG 7 Warlords. Mihawk is most definitely also a Conqueror's haki user, so it's interesting if S-Hawk is ever going to show a Backblade or Conqueror's haki or not. Anyways, next is the Seraphim version of Gecko Moria. He's smaller, but he's got the same build and sharp features. Of course, he also has the artificial version of Shadow fruit. And honestly, if you add in that fruit's powers with the Lunarian hacks, then this Seraphim is a serious threat. Imagine not being able to hurt the Seraphim because of the flames on its back, while he continues to turn all the enemy fodder into shadow soldiers one by one. I guess this is what happens when you order Sungjin Woo from Temu on Halloween. Now finally, there is the Seraphim of Sir Crocodile. He looks calm and collected, just like the real Crocodile, but with Lunarian traits and Pacifista lasers. However, he does not have Crocodile's Sand fruit. This is the thing, green blood can replicate paramecia, and we know that Vegapunk has created an artificial Zoan before. But the Sand fruit is a Logia, and Logia is that one type of devil fruit that can't be replicated. Why? It's because Logia are elemental and can't give you a blood sample in the traditional sense. This means that Crocodile Seraphim has a devil fruit other than the Sand fruit. What do you guys think? Which devil fruit could it be? Alright, so next up are the Mark III Pacifistas. These are the upgraded models that Vegapunk created after the original Kuma base units. And the main difference between these and the previous models is the bubble shield. This thing is made from weaponized Yarukimon resin, and it is basically a force field that can block almost anything. It gives these models serious protection against explosions and blunt attacks that pirates used to blow up the Pacifista units previously. Yes, these are exponentially more durable. They first appeared in Chapter 1074 when Sentomaru deployed 50 Mark III units, from PX-3001 to PX-3050, to support the Straw Hats against CP-0. When the Marines arrived at the seas surrounding Egghead, these 50 units were used to fight off the Vice Admirals, but when Kizaru defeated Sentomaru, he gave them a new order and they started supporting the Marines in fighting off the Sea Beast weapons. Later, Atlas overwrote the order and told them to attack the Marines again. But when J. Garcia Saturn finally entered the chat on Egghead Island, he used his supreme authority to make the Pacifistas stand down. They were in limbo until Kuma appeared and punched Saturn in the face in Chapter 1104. That's when Saturn ordered them all to shoot down Bonney and Kuma, and for a moment it really felt hopeless because as one of the 5 elders, Saturn had the supreme authority over the Pacifistas. But then it is revealed that the one who actually wields the highest authority is actually Bonney. That's how in Chapter 1106, Bonney takes command of all these Pacifista that look just like her dad and tells them to help them escape the island. They caused a lot of trouble for the Marines, but after the other 4 elders also arrived on Egghead in Chapter 1110. St. Ethan Baron Venus Zoro used his swordsmanship to temporarily freeze as many of them as he could see, which finally put an end to their assault. Now, to explain the authority hierarchy for all Pacifista, here's how it goes. There are 5 levels to this. The 5th level is the weakest authority, and it is for authority chip owners like Kaku, Lucci, Stussy, and Kizaru. The 4th level of authority is Sentomaru. The 3rd level is Vegapunk and all of his satellites. The 2nd level is the 5 elders, but keep in mind that their authority is only the 2nd highest for all Kuma-based Pacifista. As for the Seraphim, they still have the highest authority in the world. Now, the highest authority for all Kuma-based Pacifista, as in all Pacifista that look like Kuma, we have Jewelry Bonney. Vegapunk did this to make sure that no matter what happens, Kuma will always be on her side.